Hello everyone, and welcome to the third tutorial in our series. In the previous lesson, we covered the basics of operators, mainly arithmetic operators and the string concatenation operator. We also learnt how to create variables that store values of different data types, and we learned how to check the type of a value by using the typeof function. In this lesson, we'll learn how to add conditions to our code using if statements. We'll also cover some more operators, namely the logical and relational operators. But before we get into the lesson, I'd like to give a big thanks to all of our supporters, whether you are simply watching the video and subscribing, or going beyond and supporting my Ko-fi page. With all of your help, I'm able to make these videos, and hopefully with your continued support, I'll be able to make them a lot better. Thank you everyone. Now let's get back to the video. If statements are a way to add conditions to our code. They allow us to tell the computer to only run a certain section of code if a specific condition is met. This can be incredibly useful in many programming scenarios. Let's say we want to check if a passenger is tall enough to go on a ride. To do that, we'll start by writing down the key information, the required passenger height and the height of our passenger. So we'll do local ride requirement equals 135 in centimeters. From the previous lesson, you should know that this line of code creates a variable called ride requirement, and the value it stores is the number 135. Next, we'll write down the height of our passenger. So local Joe height equals 150, also in centimeters. Next, we start writing out the if statement, which we'll use to set our condition. So in a new line, we'll do if, and then you write the condition after it. So if Joe height is greater than ride requirement. So here we are using the more than or the greater than operator, which comes under relational operators. There are more of them, but we'll get to those in a second. We'll just finish up our example first. So if Joe height is greater than ride requirement, then, and then after then, you can hit enter to go to a new line, which should automatically add an end after it. All if statements require an end to mark the end of the code block that should run when this condition is met. So between then and end, we write the code that we want to run when this condition, Joe height is greater than ride requirement, is met. So if you want to print a message, we can do print Joe is tall enough to go on the ride. And now if you test our code by pressing play, it should show the message in output. Joe is tall enough to go on the ride. And just to make sure that this is working properly, if you change the Joe height variable to a number that is less than the ride requirement, for example 120, if we run the code now, we should not see this message in the output. And there we go, it doesn't show up in the output. But let's say we want to print out a message in case the condition fails. To do this, we can join an else statement onto our if statement just above the end. So we can push down the end to the next line and write an else statement before it. So else, and then you can hit enter to start a new line. Else statements don't require a then. So else print Joe is not allowed to go on the ride. So the code between else and end will run if the if condition at the top fails. The code will run like this. If Joe height is greater than the ride requirement, then print Joe is tall enough to go on the ride. Otherwise, print Joe is not allowed to go on the ride. So if you test it out now, this time it should say Joe is not allowed to go on the ride, because we had set the Joe height variable to 120, which is not higher than the ride requirement, which is 135. Now let's say we want to check another condition in case the first condition fails. For example, we might want to check if Joe is an adult, and if so, we can let Joe on the ride. We can do this by joining an else if statement to this if block. Else if statements always come after the if statement at the top, and just before the else statement at the bottom if there is one. But before we add the else if statement, we'll create a variable to determine Joe's age. So let's do local Joe age, and we'll set it to 20. Now we can use this variable to add a new condition to our code. So let's add a new line before the else statement, and this time we'll write else if, and then write the condition after it. So else if Joe age is greater than 18, then we go to the next line and write the code that we want to run when this condition passes. So let's do print Joe is an adult, so he can go on the right. So now the code will run like this. If Joe height is greater than the ride requirement, then print Joe is tall enough to go on the ride. However, if Joe's height is not greater than the ride requirement, but Joe's age is greater than 18, then print Joe is an adult so he can go on the ride. Otherwise, if both of these conditions weren't true, then print Joe is not allowed to go on the ride. And now if we test the code, it should say Joe is an adult so he can go on the ride, because Joe's age is 20, which is greater than 18. And now if you want to check another condition, if both of these conditions failed, then you can just add in another else if statement to the if chain. So this is how we can add conditions to our code. If the condition we set is met, then the code will run. Otherwise, it won't. Next, we're going to cover some more operators that you can use in your code. Specifically, we'll be looking at the logical and relational operators. These operators allow you to compare values with each other and perform more complex operations in your code. We'll run through the relational operators first. From the relational operators, we've covered one so far, which is the greater than symbol. This symbol, as well as all other relational operators, compares two values together and returns an answer of true or false. In the previous example, we compared Joe's height with ride requirement, and we checked if Joe's height is larger than the ride requirement, and the answer to that could have only been true or false. Now we'll go through the rest of the relational operators. So to check if one value is less than the other value, we use the less than symbol, which is the left arrow symbol. So if Joe height is less than ride requirement, then print Joe is not tall enough to go on the ride. To check if two values are equal to each other, we use the double equal symbol. So if Joe height is equal to ride requirement, then print Joe's height matches the requirement. Don't confuse this symbol with the regular single equal sign. This double equal symbol checks if two values are the same, whereas the single equal sign makes a variable equal a value, which we call assigning a value to a variable. And to write the double equal symbol, you just write two equal symbols together. And some script editor fonts will join the two equal symbols together, like so. Now to check if two values are not equal to each other, we use the squiggly line equal symbol. The squiggly line, for me, it is located next to the enter key. So if Joe height is not equal to ride requirement, then print Joe's height is not the same as the requirement. He could be taller or shorter. And to check if one value is greater than or equal to another value, we use the greater than symbol followed by an equal sign. So if Joe height is greater than or equal to the ride requirement, then print Joe's height is greater than or equal to the requirement. So this is the greater than or equal to symbol. It's just the greater than symbol followed by a single equal sign. And some script editor fonts will join those two together to make it look like this. And finally, to check if one value is less than or equal to another value, we use the less than symbol followed by a single equal sign. So if Joe height is less than or equal to the ride requirement, then print Joe's height is less than or equal to the requirement. And again, this symbol is just a less than symbol, so the left arrow symbol, followed by a single equal sign, and some fonts will join them together like so. So these are all of the relational operators that we have in Luau. All of these operators compare two values with each other and return an answer of true or false, depending on the condition. The result of this operation is actually a value itself, and it's of the Boolean data type, which just means true or false. So let's test that out. We'll create a variable called a, and we'll just assign the value 5 to it. Next, we're going to compare this value a with another number and check the result. So local result equals a is equal to 10. So in this line, we are comparing a with 10. We are checking if a, the value stored in a, which is 5, is equal to 10. And we are doing this using the double equal symbol. And the result of this operation will be stored inside our result variable. The answer to this operation can only be true or false, because a can only ever be equal to 10 or not be equal to 10. In this case, a is not equal to 10, because a is 5, and 5 is not 10. Therefore, if you print the result, it should say either true or false, and in this case, it will say false. And if you print out the type of our result, it should say Boolean, because true and false are both values of the Boolean data type. So let's test this out. And there we go. The result of this condition is a equal to 10 is false, because a is not equal to 10. So the result variable received the result of this operation, which was false, and the type of this result is a Boolean, because false is of the Boolean data type. Another thing you might have noticed is that there are parentheses around the condition. This is optional. Wrapping your condition in parentheses isn't always necessary. I did it here just to make sure that the condition is easier to read. Otherwise, it will still work if we remove these parentheses, but it might look a bit too confusing. So that's why I've left them in there. Now, as for logical operators, there are 3: and, or, and not. The AND operator checks if two conditions are true at the same time. So we can use this to check multiple conditions at once. So if you just create a variable a and make it equal 50, we can now test out our logical operators. So if a is greater than 0 and a is less than 100, then print a is less than 100 but greater than 0. So this if statement will check both of these conditions if a is greater than 0 and if a is less than 100 at the same time. So if you test this out now, it should show the message in the output. A is less than 100 but greater than 0. And if you change this to a value that is less than 100 but also less than 0, for example, minus 50, now this sentence should not show up in the output. And there you go, it's not showing up. And you can check as many conditions you want at the same time by just separating them with an AND. So we could do if a is greater than 0 and a is less than 100 and a is less than 70, and then you can do whatever you like. The OR operator checks if at least one condition is true. So it's not the same as AND, where all conditions must be true for it to pass. So if you change this to OR, now it will check if a is greater than 0 or if a is less than 100, and if either of these conditions are true, then the if statement will pass. So this time we can print a is greater than 0 or less than 100. And now if you test this out, it should show a is greater than 0 or less than 100. A is minus 50, which is less than 0, so this condition didn't pass. But it is less than 100, so this condition passed, and therefore this message will still show up in the output. And finally, the NOT operator checks for the opposite of this condition. It returns true if this condition is false, and it will return false if this condition is true. So right now, a is not equal to 0. Therefore, this condition is false. And now the NOT will make this whole if condition true. So if you test the code, it should say a is not 0. And if you change a to 0, this time a is equal to 0, so this will be true. But because of the not, it will change it to the opposite, so this whole thing will become false. And if you test the code now, it does not show the message in the output. And you might have noticed that I've wrapped the condition in parentheses again. Like I said before, wrapping the parentheses around the condition is optional, but it sometimes becomes necessary, especially when using the not operator. Right now, the not operator is checking the condition inside the parentheses. However, if we remove the parentheses, it will check the a variable itself instead of the entire condition. This is a problem because in Luau, all values except false and nil are considered true. So an empty string is considered true. The way I like to think of this is that the not operator just checks if a value is either false or nil. So with the parentheses, the condition will be true and the print statement will run, because the not operator checks if the value is either false or nil. And because a is not equal to 0, this is false. So the not operator will make this if condition true, and so the print statement will run. However, without the parentheses, this if condition will be false instead, because the not operator will check if the a variable itself is either false or nil. And because a is minus 50 and not false or nil, so the answer here will be false. And then it will compare false with 0. Are they the same? Nope. False is not the same as 0. So this whole if condition will be false, and the print statement will not run. So if you test this out, there you go, the print statement does not run. And that's it for this lesson. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. And if you would like to practice, you can create different if, elseif, and else statements with all of the different operators you've learned so far. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to add them in the comments section and I'll try to respond to all of them. And don't forget that you can join our Discord server where we have experienced scripters who can help you out. The link to it will be in the description below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.